Hey everybody, David Scarica, stock chart of the day. Hope you're all doing good. Today we're going to look at election trades because it is election day. Um, I could tell you to go out and vote, but becoming a non-resident of Canada and moving to the Bahamas almost 20 years ago, I've not voted for 20 years. And I never vote again. And by the way, it's also your right to not vote. It's your right to say, I don't like any of you. So remember that as well. So let's get into it. So the first thing, let's look at the actual election odds, the actual election charts, right? So this is a 1 week chart, and Harris had a little bump because there was a poll that came out in Idaho, or sorry, in Iowa, which is considered a swing state, even though Trump won it by 8 to 9 percentage points in each of the last two elections. And uh, so I don't think it's a swing state, but it showed Harris up by 3. I don't even know about a lot of these polls. I don't really trust them. I've always said that people who are conservative, libertarian types are more likely to not give answers to these pollsters because they respect their privacy more. And especially in recent years when it's been shunned, the media has become such a tool for the left. They shun you for being a conservative. I think that's even more so, and that's why Trump always outperforms his polling, in my opinion. So anyhow, she had this bounce. You can see she almost got even. I think on some of the betting sites, she was even maybe above Trump. And then she's kind of started to roll over again. And if we look at the longer term chart, again, I've stated that you can see they were both roughly 50% from August to about the end of October. And I continue to state that Harris is kind of like a stock chart that is breaking down, and Trump is like a stock chart that is breaking out. This is not my political opinion or what I want to happen or what I think will happen. This is just looking at it as a chartist, right? And that's what I think what will happen. So this is the TLT chart right here. And we can see that the TLT chart, that this is the most important chart. Why is the TLT selling off? Is it all to do with the Fed not raising as much? The jobs report last week was terrible, and we saw no balance in the TLT. Or is it because the debt, at 470 billion for August, 1.9 billion the first 10 months of the fiscal year, probably going to 2.3 billion for the entire fiscal year, is so high, and there's going to be so much debt rolled over, it's anticipating that we're going to have problems with debt going forward. And remember, if you get a recession, this is where it becomes, oh, the bad news is not good news. Bad news becomes bad news. And like I said in my video yesterday, let's say that 7 billion in expenditure, 7 trillion in expenditures a year goes to 8 in a recession. Goes up faster because you have to have more outlays, and the 5 billion in revenue goes to 4. All of a sudden, boom, your 2 trillion has become 4 trillion, which is about where it was during COVID, which is with the current US GDP is about like 14-15% of GDP. So that's destructive territory. So this may be the most important chart, and this chart doesn't care who wins. They know that Harris will continue to spend. Trump will do the typical Republican way of cutting taxes or keeping taxes low, but not slowing down spending. Remember, Trump was running a huge near $1 trillion deficit even before COVID in 2019. So this is the most important chart, in my opinion. But then let's look at some of the trades. The green trade would be for Kamala. Well, we saw a gap up in First Solar back here in September. It rallied to 260. And then as her popularity waned and her polling waned in October, we can see that First Solar sold off actually to below the lows of August, September, and then had a little bounce here when she had that little bounce. So what does First Solar do? If you want to bet on this is a way you might be able to bet on the election, not having to do one of those betting pools. You want to bet on Harris? You might want to buy First Solar. You want to bet on Trump. You might want to short First Solar, right? And if we look at TAN, the solar index, it's the same kind of thing. Big gap up after that debate, and then a big move down when it looks like Harris's polling started to get weak. FAN would probably be the same way. Yep, same way. Big gap up. This is the wind ETF, and then the sell off here. So because remember, the Democrats will continue to subsidize this sort of thing, right? Going forward, it's hard to look at the EV companies because they kind of trade on their own and their own sales. I find they're not really trading with public policy, but definitely these green energy stocks. Another Harris play would be lithium. Again, lithium needed for batteries, for solar, for EVs, etc. And same thing, you can see that gap up here on ALB, and then it kind of like consolidated here. Now it hasn't sold off as much, but it's much cheaper than the solar stocks, than the wind stocks, etc. So again, ALB, maybe you go long if you think Harris is going to win, short if you think she's going to lose. The issue I would watch out with lithium though is we're still going to see a move to green energy, regardless, even if Trump wins. And these lithium stocks are very beat up. Like this was a $300 company at one time, and it's $100 now. And it's a very cheap stock. So now let's go look at some oil and gas. We got Exxon. You can see now the problem with oil and gas is we have oil at near multi-month lows at the low end of the range. Basically, oil's range is mid 60s on the downside, mid to late 80s on the upside over the last year or two, and we're just on the bottom end of the range. So maybe that is kind of like skewing some of these oil stocks because, of course, Trump wants to do drill, baby, drill, and all of that sort of thing, right? Let's go look at the oil index. And you can see that here. Look at Halliburton. Actually, these might start looking interesting because drill, baby, drill, Schlumberger, which I think is SLB. Yeah. Halliburton, you can see they've had big drops, 30, 40%. Now, I like to buy these stocks during maximum pessimism, like where they were in 2020. But, I think they've had a big enough drop here. If you get a pro energy president, that could work. They're probably worth a shot here. Use the old lows of the stop loss. This is a Trump victory play. Use the old the old lows as a stop loss, which is 39. The stock's 41. That's not a big deal, and go from there. Or Halliburton is the same way. Use maybe 27 as your stop loss and go from there. And I really like these kind of basing patterns. Actually, now that I'm putting this out, I'm probably going to go long some Halliburton right after I do this. Part of the reason is, well, another potential one is, and we actually have this on my list, and I'm actually going to get rid of this stock because I had it for the dividend, is Pfizer. Because if Trump wins, RFK is going to do a lot in his administration health-wise. And I think these pharmaceuticals are going to have some issues with RFK in. Right. And we all know there's too many GMOs and food. For example, when I travel and I go to Europe, most of Europe has always been known for being healthier than the United States. But what I was always shocked about now is that if you go to the UK, which UK was always seen as having crappy food, low quality food, they really promoted this. They call it farm to fork theory, where they wanted to promote the local farmers. Those famous celebrity chefs like Gordon Ramsay, Jamie Oliver promoted that. Of course, now the Labor Party is trying to do this disastrous tax of doing inheritance taxes on farms, which is absolutely disgusting in my opinion. It's actually almost communism what they're trying to do. But anyhow, yeah. So anyhow, I think that these are the kind of plays. So anyhow, so to get back, I think the pharmaceuticals are going to have a lot of problems because RFK is against a lot of vaccines. He's against a lot of these things these companies do, etc. So this is about a flat trade for me. I got in between 27.50 and 28. Like I said, I got in because it has 6% dividend, and it is from its highs. It's beaten up. You can see it's at this low since April, this rally since April. But from its highs, I think it's down almost 50%. But I think I'm going to move this into Schlumberger or Halliburton because I like those plays better right now than this, especially with them being so beaten up. Watch out for that as well. What else here going forward? So yeah, so this would be another Harris play. Probably the Democrats are going to be more pro pharmaceutical and the Republicans anti, which is hilarious because that was not the case in the past. So what else would be going forward with oil and gas? Of course, we have the the defense contractors. The thing is, it's kind of similar for them either way. Okay, Trump won't have as many wars, but Trump also is going to give a lot to spend a lot of money on the military, right? So let's go look at. I always forget them. So look at Lockheed Martin. It already had a big run. You see it declines here. So I don't think these. And Boeing's had its problems, of course, with the strikes and all of that sort of thing. So I don't think these kind of things matter either way. Maybe you look at Ford and GM as Trump plays too, because he's going to really try to promote the domestic industry. So, you could look at that as well, those domestic car industries. But of course, you can make the other argument that they could do more plants in Mexico and third world countries. Their margins might be higher. So, But I think it's more that he want people to buy American at home as well, right? So like for example, if you're going to buy an EV, he's going to want you to buy a Tesla or one of the EVs that Ford and GM make, or not the EVs that come from China and other countries, right? So anyhow. So those are some of our election plays. Look, you might want to buy oil and gas if you're Trump. You might want to buy pharmaceuticals, uh, uh, green energy plays if you think Harris is going to win, not even pro Harris. Sorry. So that's kind of my ideas on that sort of thing, and as well. So like. I believe in the same thing in all these elections. Like I usually don't trade based on politics, but there are certain industries they can influence. Like, for example, in Canada, like as this election nears in Canada, it's about 11 months away. You're definitely, I think, going to want to look at the Canadian oil and gas plays because it looks like that Poilievre is going to win in a landslide, and that's going to be and of course, if Trump wins, it almost means that the Keystone Pipeline will get built, and that's huge for Suncor and some of the other oil and gas plays that are in Alberta. And like, for example, right now, Trudeau just announced a cap on the amount of oil and gas production in Alberta. So again, you can see political policy there is playing a role in the sector. So let's go look at Suncor just quickly. And that was part of the reason we had this little decline here in Suncor. You can see Suncor is more in a range right now, but like this is the kind of stock, it's very cheap, by the way, that could soar if that was the case. There's other sectors like uranium has been rolling over, but I think the problem with some of these sectors too, just as a caveat with green energy, with something like uranium, they also trade on the oil and gas price. Oil and gas is still our number one producer of energy. Fuel for cars, get natural gas, diesel power plants, etc. So those energies all become more appealing when we have high oil and gas prices. So also because they become more competitive with it, because solar and green energies are still more expensive than natural gas. So that's another thing to kind of think about here going forward is just how we're going to do this stuff going forward in terms of like what's going to happen with oil and gas. Because one thing you have to understand about fracking is um, it's gotten a lot cheaper. Like when these frackers started, like the late 2000s and early 2010s, when that boom started, they needed that $100 oil price. Their probably costs are like $80 all in. Now their costs are like $40. So at $60, they can make good margins. So that's kind of the difference now. They can make money and they can flood the supply as long as the oil and gas prices don't totally collapse and still be cash flow positive, etc. So that's something to think about as well, is that you don't necessarily have to see super high oil and gas prices for a boom in that sector if the drilling really picks up. So um, that's it for our election plays. Let's see what happens. Like I said, Trump is ahead in the betting polls. The national average has Harris up, no, has it between flat, Harris up maybe 2-3. But I've always made the argument that Harris has to win by more than 3 points because she's going to have that concentrated vote out west in all the three western states, especially California and New York. And New York and California are still two largest states population wise, even if they have been losing population in recent years. And and she's going to get like, especially in California, she's going to get like 65% of the vote there. So that kind of skews the national average. Because California is roughly 12% of the country's population. So anyhow, I hope you enjoyed this. Like I said, go out and vote. Don't vote. Do what you want. It's still kind of a free country. And I hope you enjoyed this. This was pretty fun to do. And I'll talk more about the market as a whole after we know who wins. I don't think it matters, like I've talked about, because market cap to GDP, how high valuations are. I think we're in one of those election cycles where the market peaks right after the election or within 2 months or whatever. So that's about it.